Welcome to another session of Just Me podcast. And today we are joined by the amazing Gaz Jones. So I'm going to ask Gaz, who are you and what do you do?
Well, I am a part-time video editor. I'm also a carer. I am just a very passionate person, and yeah, I've been involved with the Meee program since 2016. So I suppose I should probably start there.
Please do. So how did you get involved with dear old me?
I believe we met at I went to a job fair because I was just out of university and struggling to kind of find my place in the world, um, and yeah, I was kind of struggling for work, and I was living back at home, and I walked into the job fair, and you were sat at a table, and you weren't trying to sell me anything. You just kind of got my attention and just asked, about me, and that's how I got involved. That's what brought me onto the first kind of trial of the program, and how I got involved making videos, for promotional videos and stuff like that. And yeah, what's that? Nearly 10 years we've known each other, nearly.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a huge smile on my face because I remember it all, and I remember the first. I think it was the second session that we ever ran. It was the 4-day course, wasn't it? And it was in Colwyn Bay in North Wales,
Yeah,
and I remember talking to you about, because you went to Manchester, didn't you, for media studies and stuff.
yeah.
And as you said, you just sort of felt lost. And we did the 4-day course, didn't we? And we've remained friends and colleagues ever since.
Yeah, it was. It felt like the exact thing I needed at that point in
Mm.
my life. That I didn't realize that I needed, and
Mm.
I might never have gone to the job fair. I might never have met you, and my life might have been completely differently. But that's like everything, isn't it? One thing can change your entire life. So but the program did so much for me, in
Oh,
started me on my path, to kind of changing into. It wasn't necessarily changing into the person I wanted to be. It was the
yeah,
person
yeah,
I always was, but I had to
yeah.
rediscover that part of myself because I felt that maybe I'd not been encouraged in school. I'd not been encouraged to kind of pursue those paths, even though I had a supportive family in that. I just felt that I'd been kind of let down, at points in my life. So it was exactly what I needed, said honestly.
Brilliant. So, in terms of your journey through life, so grew up sort of, average kind of or kind of neurotypical kind of mum and dad, all that kind of stuff. And then why did you go into media? What was the thing that you, because I know there's music as well background. So how did
Mhm.
you arrive at that? How did you find those passions for music and kind of media?
So my number one love has always been music. Since I was very, very small, I was fascinated with the music system that my mum and dad had, and I was always trying to get to it. I was always trying to reach it. I was too small to obviously to be able to use it and
Yeah.
understand it, but I was just the sounds that were coming out of the system, and so many different voices and like instruments, and it was just a magical thing to me, and I just wanted to get as close to the thing as possible. And
Wow.
as I got older, I was always dancing growing up. I would dance like nobody was watching. I was just enjoying myself and just being so carefree. Um and then that progressed when I got older. I found my own music taste, and I mean, my mum and dad introduced me to so much music. Like the Beatles and Michael Jackson and
Brilliant.
ABBA and all these different types of influences. And then it was almost like I was filling in the gaps as I was getting older in all of
Brilliant.
these different areas that I was still discovering. And then when I got to high school, I was interested in learning to play the drums. Well, I was before high school actually, but yeah, I got my first drum kit when I was 12
Mhm.
for a Christmas present, and it was pretty basic setup, but I was lucky enough to have enough space in my mum and dad's garage to be able to set it up and be able to play. The the neighbors were pretty good, pretty considerate. That I was, that I was able to play them quite a bit just in my spare time. Because although I did go for lessons when I got to high school, I'd largely just been self taught. So yeah, I was in bands through school, and I met different people and all the rest of it. And but the other love of mine had always been, the media,
Yeah.
essentially, film, TV, you name it. One of my favorite things was, when you would get the old DVDs and you'd get the special features of the behind the scenes of like how the music was made, or the special effects and all the rest of it. Like that was, that next to watching the film, that was the next favorite thing that I wanted to
Brilliant.
learn all about, was how do you get to that point? How do you, get involved in making all this incredible media? So that was always, it was always going to be in my head. I think from high school I knew that I wanted to be either a drummer in a famous band, or like a video editor, something to do with, the media.
Mm.
um, so pretty quickly, I decided that I didn't want to continue with high school. So as soon as I could, I left high school and went to college, and I
Brilliant.
studied media production. And then not long after that, I went to university, and I studied TV and radio in Manchester. So um, it was just, I was just following the path of, okay, well, you know, being a drummer, being in a successful band is
Mm.
like, the chances of that are very low. And so that's the way I was probably looking at it, was, well, this seems like a safer option, or this would
Mm.
allow me to make a living from this. um but I quickly kind of realized, uh, the course that I was doing, it wasn't very, um, it was very broad. They would kind of try you in every area of the potential, every potential area in the media industry, but it also wasn't very technical. So, I probably could have chosen a more technical course, but I didn't
Mm.
didn't believe that I was, capable enough of doing the more technical course. So I felt at the end of the course, that I was just kind of left to my own devices, really,
Mm.
to find my path. And that's what led me to doing more charity work, because I was like, this is something that I care about. I want to help people. I want to spread, messages of like kindness and goodness, and like better the world. Um, because there are many areas of the media industry which, are essentially the opposite to that. Which, I wasn't interested in making my money on the misery of others, if you like.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was probably my drive. But after about 2 years in the media industry, I was burnt out. Um, Largely had been, exploited, because the
Yeah.
industry does not treat it's almost like they don't really value the art of the craft. They just value the final product. It's also probably just how, you know competitive it is as an industry, to get into in the first place. So, you need to know the right people, really. That's what it comes down to. So it doesn't matter how skilled you are. Like, I mean, it does, but it also, it's about, whether those opportunities are even available. And especially now, I can't imagine having to go against the grain of, so many companies are replacing those jobs with AI.
Mm.
It must be so much more difficult now for the younger generation. And I still consider myself young. I'm only 30 plus, but I do feel that it is like it put me off, really. Those 2 years working in the industry and the way I was treated. And I've worn my heart on my sleeve, and I've always been very open with people. And I feel that I had to deal with people who were not as open and not as authentic. And it drove me to kind of having trust issues especially in the working environment.
Mm.
So yeah, I've probably 2022. I think I lost my job, uh, and I was burnt out, uh, dealing with a few different kind of mental health issues. I was in a bit of a depression.
Mm.
Um, I was still kind of trying to find myself. Um, I only recently learned about my neurodivergence. I have ADHD, which is like it's like you get like overstimulated by like loud
Mm.
sounds, and so like music can be my worst enemy or my best friend, depending on the
Yeah.
day, depending on how I'm feeling, but going to social situations, I dealt with social anxiety for many years, and I didn't deal with it necessarily well. When you don't know the the kind of science behind it, you're kind of
Mm.
searching in the dark, And my
Mm.
parents have always been supportive. They've always been supportive of everything that I've always done. But I don't think they understood it either. So, I think that is probably a large part of myself that I have learned to love, really. Whereas in the past, I was probably trying to conform too much and trying to be like everyone else and trying to be accepted. And wants to be accepted. Wants to be loved.
Mm.
But
Mm.
it can be difficult um, when you don't get the support that you need, or the imposter syndrome takes over, and you think, well, who am I to complain about anything when there's
Mm.
other people struggling with, you know, you think of the term disabled and people think of the most extreme, the example of that. But in a lot of ways, if you don't fit to what is, everybody else, whatever this is, like whatever people call normal. I mean, there is no normal. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
Um, but when you're trying to fit in a very kind of narrow space that you're supposed to fit in this box, and you realize, oh, I don't fit in this box. Why am I different? Why am I, but that's the
Mm.
thing that makes us human. That's the thing that makes us unique, is that
Mm.
nobody else is like you are the only one of yourself. Nobody else comes close. We're all different, and we need
Mm.
to embrace that, so I think I've learned a lot over the last few years. I've learned to love myself. I've met my partner, and
Brilliant.
I have an affinity with animals, which I probably didn't embrace as much growing up. I was probably more fearful, but
Mm.
I have such an kinship with animals and with people of like-minded people. I just want to collaborate. I just want to meet people and create things to better humanity ultimately. And part of that has been, I've been writing music, and I've been thinking about creative avenues and ways that my video editing can kind of
Mm.
do that, whether it's through the program or whether it's through other charities. Something that I've done recently, I've been going to a mental health group for men
Brilliant.
in the south side of Glasgow, and it has been, it's made such a change to my life, that to be in a space, in an open space with other men, and being able to be
Mm.
comfortable speaking out, and talking about things that are bothering us, and having that safe space and support and camaraderie. And it's a brotherhood. Like, the people that I've met on this in this space have become really close friends, and we just we support each other completely. um and there needs to be more spaces like that. And I think that's why, if we could have the Me program all over the
Yeah.
UK, and again, it's important for all genders, for men and women. And but men's health can, particularly right now, is so needed.
Yes. So what advice would you give to kind of your younger self or younger people? who've gone maybe same route, different route, are struggling with things with identity? What advice would you give them?
So I think part of growing up is, learning that, okay, well, we learn through making mistakes, right? But
Yeah.
also, I think everyone wants to think that they know everything, and they don't want to take on, any new information. They want to act like they know. You can't go through your life like that,
Mm,
I think you need to be open to the idea that we are largely misinformed a lot of the time, because uneducated people are easier to mislead, right?
mm,
Uneasier, it's they're easier to exploit, they're easier to take advantage of.
mm.
Um, so I think the advice I would give is go into the world and be open to the idea that you may know nothing, or that the things that you have been taught are largely different to what are the reality. But also, you know, your reality, I feel like a lot of the time, particularly now with people being terminally online, and I've spent a long time doing that myself,
Mm.
um, the result that it has is the polarization that we're seeing currently now, where people are always they're almost choosing which reality they live in,
Yeah.
and we need to all live in the same reality, because that won't change. That you, you can choose your reality to an extent of who you want to be and what you want to do and what you want to achieve, but
Mm.
some things are just fundamental to us continuing to support each other as a human race. If we
Brilliant.
want to continue this life, we need to find what makes us the same rather than what makes us different, even though the differences are important as well, because they're
Mm.
what make us unique. They're what bring originality. We need to embrace originality.
Mm.
So much, again, I consume a lot of TV and film media. I feel like the biggest problem at the moment is that, because the risk of a TV show or a film is so great, or even a video game, because video games are largely at risk as well. Um, Everything's so homogenized at this point. Everything has to be based on an idea that has already been successful, right?
Yes.
And the problem with that is that all media ends up basically becoming the same. It becomes whitewashed. It becomes, you know, whatever. And I think a large part of that, it drives people away from the media, because they feel that that, well, this is something I've seen before, or this is something that has clearly had the heart ripped out of it. One of the biggest problems I think in the media industry is that you hire these incredible people with incredible talent, and then you micromanage them to the point where you neuter the thing that you're creating. you
Yeah.
you take all of the original ideas and all of the diversity as well out of
Mm.
the thing. I think it's fine that there's better representation throughout media now, but we've got a long way to go. And I do feel that these big corporations, when they make these changes that are, different from the original story, or they don't want to highlight the issue that was a problem in the previous iteration of that piece of media,
Mm.
by ignoring it, all you're doing is you're also neutering the opportunity to highlight why that was an issue in the first place. So if you've got like a Disney film that deals with like a race issue, or deals with something that hasn't aged particularly well, rather than take an opportunity to make that a transformative piece,
Yeah. Brilliant.
they will just neuter the whole thing, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
takes the heart out of the film, because you know it, any changes that they do make feel superficial. They
Yeah.
feel like they're just pandering to an audience that actually the audience aren't interested, and they're not asking for you to do that. So
Mm.
I think the biggest thing is to embrace originality, to embrace that we can't 100% be sure of everything that we were taught from the get-go,
Yeah.
because so much of what we are taught is from a biased perspective, or again, the news can be biased in the same way that um, any piece of media can be biased. It's always coming from one side,
Uh,
and we've obviously learned that the problem with polarization is that not everyone fits on one side. There's extremists on both sides, but you can't come to a mutual agreement. If you can't find a middle ground. Um,
yeah. Yeah.
and particularly now, at this point in with things going on in the world, I think that idea is so important, right? Because if we don't talk to the other side,
Yeah.
regardless of what side you're on, if you don't talk to the other side, you're not open to being wrong, you'll never grow as a person, and you'll never get to a point of understanding. You'll never be able to coexist with each other. So yeah, I guess my in answer to your question, the main thing is question everything,
Yeah.
do your own research, um, have uh, you know have confidence in yourself, because we are so much more capable than we give ourselves credit, and a
Yeah. Big
large
time.
part of our insecurity of why we don't think that we are capable of as much is because we're told that we're not as capable of those things.
Brilliant. And what kind of fizzy pop, what kind of really gets you kind of excited? I mean, you've made tons of films, you edit all the podcasts that we've done since the beginning of Dot. What gets you really excited? It's that fizzy pop moment.
Something that has always excited me is playing music or
Mm.
writing music, or just experiencing new music. And I mean, we're drowning in so much good music right now, and everything's so freely accessible. But when you see that the platform that's providing it is maybe problematic, like it makes it difficult, right? It's everything is like a there always seems to be like a downside, right? But
Yeah.
I'm trying to focus on the positives. I'm trying to focus on it's true what they say, the best music comes out in the worst times. you know
Yeah.
um but honestly, everything, for me in particular with my life right now, I'm focusing on all the positivities. I'm focusing on what I can control in my life. I'm
Brilliant.
focusing on the things that I can change in my local area. I
Brilliant.
think that community is so important right now. I think that checking in with people, just seeing if they're okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are lonely, people are isolated, people are disconnected from reality because they spend so much time online, and
Mm.
they find these echo chambers, and they're kind of
Mm.
so I think it's so important to check in with your neighbor, and
Brilliant.
check in with people that you ultimately care about, because I think that the thing that I find the most passion about right now is creating things. I've always loved creating
Mm.
things, and creating things with other people, of like-minded people, sharing things that I find, um, that inspire me, things that I'm passionate about, something that I feel so driven towards helping people and creating um, communities.
Yeah.
Whether that be in online spaces or whether that be in real life spaces. Um, that's always been something that's I've struggled with over the years. Like I just want everyone to get on. I just want I just want to make the best of whatever situation we've been dealt. Um, but certainly making communities, it requires you to ask the hard questions, and if you're just going to allow every person to say anything they want all the time, you're creating you're basically encouraging openness and honesty, but you also need to be wary that some people may take offense, or may not want to grow as people. They might not want to change, and you've got to be open to that, right? You've got to be willing to let some people go because they're not at that point in their life to question the things that they believe, or question who they are as people. I think you always need to be questioning. I think but I'm so passionate about so much,
Mm.
um, and I love seeing progress. Seeing things that are actually making a difference, changing things. You know, it's why I continue to work with the Meee program. I think
Yeah.
if there could be more spaces for people to speak openly, and to be feel like they can communicate with each other, because so much of it is fear and insecurity. And we've talked all about this. It's not an easy thing. It's a journey, and you'll be at different parts of your journey, and depending where you are, you might not feel ready to be taking that next step, or but ultimately the only person who's going to do anything is you, right?
Mm.
And the only reason that anything got better for me was because I pushed myself to put myself in situations where I'm most uncomfortable, out of my comfort zone, push myself into social situations, and in turn, that's allowed me to get better with communicating with people.
Yeah.
I still probably overshare. I still probably, from time
No
to
bad thing.
time, rub some people the wrong way. But I think you've got to be open, right? You've got to
Mm.
be open to everything,
Mm.
and that's what I've learned. In particular, since getting with my partner, I mean, I've learned so much more with every relationship I've been in. I've learned more about females, and their, how they see the world and how they experience things. And
Brilliant.
it's stuff that you would never really consider, because it's not taught to guys, right? When you're in school, you don't get given any of this context that you're missing, right? And so,
Mm.
and that's obviously intentional. It's that they don't want to scare people. But I think it's like anything. I was thinking the other day that the idea of death is so final, and so you there's no getting away from it, and yet we're terrified to talk about it. um just with the young people, right? And that's something you have to prepare them for at some point. And
Mm.
for some people, it means that because they've never had to deal with it, when they finally, when it comes to that time and they lose a loved one or something, they don't know how to deal with it. And I think the more that we talked about that, and the more we normalize that as a talking point, and we don't demonize it, because you know it's just a part of life, like anything. Sex is another conversation that I think is just like that. So much of what we kind of deal with now is as a result of the sex education failings, being delivered to people. It's not educating people for the right reasons. If you're using scaremongering as the only form of how to connect with someone, you know it might not do anything. And it's all to do with our upbringing. It's all to do with your background and your religion, and all of these things play a factor into how you deal in the world with problems thrown at you. So it's like, I think the change has to come from the education system. um, but it doesn't seem that much has changed since
Yeah.
World War II, in terms of the way that it produces people who are going to take orders, who are going to conform to, you
Yes.
know, to whatever is asked of them ultimately, right? But it's not. You need to think for yourself. You need to think what is best for you. What was what's the thing that's going to allow you to be the person that you want to be? What's the path you want to go down? And I think something like that is, when you ask a child very early on, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? I didn't know what I wanted to be, you know, like still, you know,
Yeah,
I'm
me
still
too.
figuring that out. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
crazy that we ask these questions of children, and yet we don't give them the tools or the space to actually meaningfully think about them. You know,
Mhm.
and so I think the approach to education has to change, and that in turn would solve a lot of problems with society. Um, you know, but the everything that drives towards that, you know, music is another great avenue for getting people to think more openly. um and obviously, you know, film and documentaries are so very much like one of my favorite pieces of kind of like media types right now. I watch a lot of documentaries, and I think, you know, obviously, you know, do your research after the fact, and you know, double check stuff, but um I think a lot can be gleaned from other people's experiences and other examples in history where stuff has happened, and you're learning about each phase of that instance, and where things could have been better handled or better
Yes,
understood. And you know, that it does a lot. I think it does a lot.
brilliant.
Yeah.
So, if you were to use one word, Mr. Gaz Jones, to describe yourself, what would it be?
Whew.
Just
I
takes you
think
back
you probably asked me this in the past, and I think
many times.
the word I usually came back with was creative,
Yeah, brilliant.
and that probably still stands. I think I've always been a creative at heart. I've always been a lover, not a fighter.
Yeah,
Um, and I just want to create more stuff, Sid, and I want to create stuff for me as well. I don't want to just. I think for a time I got into the headspace of I was when I was creating anything, it was only for, you know, for like a work purpose, you know, for like something that had been asked of me. But no, I want to create stuff just because I can, right? Just to see if I can,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
to see what comes out of that. Because if you test yourself, if you just don't put any pressure on yourself, you just decide, right, I'm going to make
Mm,
something because I want to, because I have the time, and because I have the energy, and because I don't owe anything to anyone. I could just create something myself, and I just want to see what I want to create, you know.
brilliant.
And our minds are, you know, I feel like I wake up some days with new inspiration, and it comes from so many different places. I think one of the things my partner Loz has allowed me to see is like find inspiration in everything in life, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, that's lovely.
because it's everywhere.
Beautiful. Gaz Jones, thank you as always. Been lovely. And it's funny, isn't it? I mean, 10 years on, the thing that I love about you and always have is the progression and the acceptance of that, and the fact that, you know, the confidence that I hear in your voice now is so different from, you know, what I heard kind of 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So thank you as always. Um,
Anytime, Sid.
and it's so funny because you'll be editing your own podcast, which makes me giggle.
Yeah, that's all.
It's kind of
That's
funny,
fine.
really.
I'll take out the ums and ahs.
Indeed. God bless you. Thank you very much.
All the best, Sid. Much
Thanks,
love.
mate.
Bye now.
Brilliant.